Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our Facebook Live this week. This week, we're talking about a topic which can be contentious or not, depends how you look at it. But we'll be looking at what makes a leader different from a manager and how can one become a great leader. And we're speaking today to Simon Ford on this topic. Simon has been working with a number of organizations where he coaches leaders and also guide them in terms of what makes a great leader. But Simon, before we jump into this topic, maybe to give our audience some background about yourself and what is it that you do.
Sure, my background since I've been living in the United Kingdom, which is over 30 years now, is I worked in asset management for 17, 18 years. But I studied sports psychology, not because I wanted to become a sports psychologist, but I wanted to know what were the differences that made the difference between the high achievers and the average achievers. And I also want to know what the differences were between teams that really fulfilled their potential and excelled and those others that didn't. So they may have had more natural ability, more athleticism or whatever it happened to be, but they never got the goal.
Okay.
So that was the starting point, as my interest is in what were the differences that make the difference between the best and the rest. A couple of colleagues, or people I knew, tried to get me involved in learning and development. And I said, I'm not a psychologist really, I'm not a teacher, I'm not qualified to be here. They kindly referred to me the way that I work with people over the years. And long story short, we established a learning and development business, and we work largely with leaders.
Okay. No,
Everything
good.
starts and stops with the leaders.
Oh, so glad to know I've got somebody here that can then answer my questions.
Well, I'm not saying that I've got all the answers, I've got a lot of the questions.
No, that's true, but you're talking from experience and you're talking from, I think, the value that you can add with what you've done and what you've implemented and what's worked and what's not worked. So to go to our first question then, and a lot of people talk about there's a difference between a leader and a manager. What is the difference between a leader and a manager?
It's a great question, one that's often raised. And if I may say, first of all, in many languages, the word for leader, manager, is actually the same word. It's a continuum of the same thing. So there are times when leaders need to manage, and there are times when managers need to lead. So, as I say, it's part of the same continuum. In terms of what are the differences are based upon situation and circumstances. But leaders need to have management tools in the toolbox, and managers, if they're managing people, need to have management tools in the toolbox as well. So the differences aren't quite as vast as people like to make them out to be. And if we look at the great leaders, those people who inspire people to achieve, it's quite interesting to see their management style and what are the things that they do that people want to work for them as opposed to they work for them because they have to.
Yeah, so true.
And that's a management and leadership combination.
So having said that, is there then really a difference between being a leader and a manager?
There are differences in terms of what you're doing, but in terms of trying to pinhole somebody and saying you're a leader and you're a manager, I would say no.
Okay.
I would say that don't pigeonhole people as you're a leader and you're a manager. I prefer to refer to this and say at this point in time you need to take a leadership role, even though you are currently a manager of a people or processes or whatever it happens to be. There's other times when a leader needs to take a more of a management role to help people get committed to their vision of where they want to go. If you don't have people committed to your vision, they don't know where they're going.
That's true. So would you say the leader is the one that would create the vision for the company and your manager implements it?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and with numerous businesses of all shapes and sizes we've worked with now over a number of decades. The starting point is, have you got a clear vision? And it is usually the leaders that are creating that clear vision of what do we want, when do we want it, who's critical to its success, where we'll be in relation to where we are now, and that's not geographic.
Mm.
And there's a strategic plan and hopefully a plan of action. The great leaders will engage other people within the organization to come up with their ideas
Mm.
as to the vision and how,
Mm.
especially, they're going to execute and manage this process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that process, they get that commitment from their people to the vision. A business without a vision, I always refer to Alice in Wonderland. I've
Yeah.
never read the whole book, by the way, but is the Cheshire Cat said to Alice, "If you don't know where you're going,
Yeah.
any road will take you there."
Yeah.
It's a leadership responsibility to have that clear vision and communicate that throughout the business.
Mm.
It's up to the managers to help lead the people through that process and also manage the process to achieve those objectives.
So you've mentioned something quite critical in terms of, the leader having to set that vision and then communicate that vision. So that's one mistake I come across in terms of the business I work with. I find sometimes there's a vision, but it's all up here,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really get communicated. What are the other common mistakes do you think that leaders make?
Okay, so let's assume they've got a vision and a strategic plan.
Yeah.
Even that doesn't work. You need a plan of action so
Yeah.
people know what their role and responsibility is and how that's connected to achieving that objective. So some of the things that I see leaders, how do you get people engaged and move?
Yeah.
You got to take them with you.
Yes. Yes.
Mistakes, I don't think they're particularly good at holding people to account, or themselves, by the way. So leaders, where sometimes leaders let themselves down is they don't hold themselves to account of doing what they should be doing and must be doing to drive the business forward, and they very often not holding their people to account in a way that is inspirational and reward towards motivated.
Yeah.
So holding people to account is another, I would say, area where it's not just holding people to account, it's how you hold them to account.
That is so true. So it adds on or leads nicely to a question that I then have, because people talk about leaders are born, and you cannot teach someone really to be a leader. What's your viewpoint on that?
I disagree with it. That is my first point. And I've done this through exercise. We like to see people playing games because they learn more through doing an exercise or playing a game. And putting a group together and saying, okay, we want you to build a bridge out of paper and sticky tape. And it's got to be strong enough between two desks to hold a 500-gram box of chocolates. It's always good to have an incentive. And it is interesting through that process to see who steps in at what time to take that leadership role, whether it's in designing the structure or whether it's in actually the physics that's going to hold that structure together, or whether it's the big picture. So everybody has something to contribute, and they do so and take leadership and ownership for that portion. Now there's some people through confidence, situations, circumstances and opportunity that more naturally just step into that leadership role and say, I'm going to take control of this. That doesn't mean the other people in the team aren't leaders or can't be leaders. And great sports teams talk about leadership density. And even Eddie Jones, we're on the cusp of England possibly winning another World Cup.
Let's not go there. South Africa is in it as well.
South Africa in there, and they're going to try and spoil the party. So Eddie Jones talks about leadership density, and if we go back to great leaders in businesses, and actually whether it's in businesses, military, whatever it is, they talk about leadership density. So what great leaders do is they build leadership density in their businesses. And whether that's a small business, and I'm talking about a really small business, it's about people taking ownership of the result, not ownership of tasks. And creating that leadership, you own the result.
Okay. So you've used the word now density, leadership density. So you could explain to our audience what you mean by leadership density.
Sure. It means that not everybody's running to you as the leader for the answers or whenever there's a problem or there's a challenge. It's for them to take ownership of their area of responsibility. And work out wherever there's a problem, there's a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to get the milk out of a coconut. It's a problem,
Yeah.
but there are solutions to it.
Yeah.
So you want to give people that authority and autonomy to take ownership, and they may make mistakes and not get it right the first time. But by giving them that leadership responsibility, and for them to inspire the people who are reporting into them, into the vision for that area of responsibility, all they're doing exactly the same as the CEO of any sized organization, but just for their area of responsibility. And the more leaders you have in the business, and again, I'm going to refer to sport if I may, even for those of you who aren't interested in sport, apparently this happens in theatre as well.
Yes.
It happens in orchestras where there are numerous leaders, so that it's not down to one person to deal with all elements of what's going on. You've got people who can work out what are the solutions, what are the options, which is the best option, why is it the best option, there needs to be evidence that this is the best option, and the reason why, and then executing it. And being able to present that up to the CEO and say, these are the challenges we're facing, these are the options we've considered, we selected this as the best option to do, and this is what we've done about it. So it's building that communication is central to the whole thing, but the authority and autonomy for the individual.
No, for me, communication is critical. So I think for me, you're preaching to the converted. I always say communicate. It's so important. And if only business owners and people within organizations, your directors, your CEOs realize how critical that is. And for me, that would be one of the traits I would look for in a leader, in terms of how, not only what do they communicate and how they communicate, but how frequently do they communicate.
We will just continue agreeing with each other on this basis. So it's not just one style of communication. It's identifying what is your opposite type. We all have preferences.
Yeah, exactly.
So somebody who you would normally find, I mean, this sounding as though I'm putting people in boxes and pigeonholing, I'm not. But there are people who are internal thinkers, they're cautious, they want the supporting evidence, they want the data and the facts before they make a decision.
Exactly.
The creators will come up with 10 ideas a minute and pursue each one with equal vigor.
Yeah.
So depending on who you're dealing with as a leader, it's about making minor adaptations to your style of communication so that you are making that connection with that person on a level. And actually what happens with human nature is it brings you closer together. And great leaders are very good at that. The exceptional leaders are absolutely brilliant in making that connection with different people based upon their preferential styles of communication.
So you spoke about great leaders are good at doing that. So what makes a great leader? If you had identified at least 2 or 3 traits that makes a good leader, what would you say that would be?
To bring it down to 3.
I'm putting on the spot
that's
now.
A little challenge.
I know.
So without naming names, I think that there's certain traits that we see that great leaders do. One of them is that they don't stick to one style of leadership. They know the different styles of leadership and they know which one to apply in which set of circumstances or what situation. If there's a fire in the building, it's not time to sit down and start having a discussion about it.
Yeah.
It's a get out of here. There's other times when you do need to be engaging or visionary and helping people go with you or coaching, whatever it happens to be. And the great leaders know what style to apply in any set of situational circumstances. I think the second thing that they do is great leaders create a climate within their business. And they create a climate where people are committed to a vision, they know their roles and responsibilities, they know what the standards are, and they're all committed to trying to improve the standards. It's almost a game, it's fun to improve the standards. They are given that autonomy, which we've already referred to own the result within a framework. Don't give people freedom without a framework. And they're fairly rewarded. And those are the elements that I see in a climate that great leaders create, was the second thing. And the third thing I would say is that they hold themselves and others to account. But I think, it's a difficult on that 3. I would say that there's the style, there's the engaging. We talked about the communication. The great leaders spend more time with their people than the average leaders. Great leaders walk around their business.
Yeah.
They're visible to the business. They're not stuck in an office, on the 6th floor with some flash carpets. They're visible to their business. They go around. And no, one thing I nearly missed out on, they listen to their people.
Yeah, that's
They
critical.
listen empathically to the people. They're constantly looking to feedback. Whether they like it or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
They're looking for that honesty and transparent feedback of what's working, where's the evidence. If it's not working, where's the evidence? What can we do about it? What can we get better? So they're constantly listening. They're great listeners.
Yeah. And I guess it comes back to what you said now as well, is that it's irrespective of whether it's positive or negative feedback, they just open to get what's being told to them. And I think what's also going to be important is, yes, you're listening, but what action are you taking on it? Because your employees want to see certain actions being taken. And if you cannot, then say we can't do this for these reasons.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And one of my favorite expressions is that there's no such thing as bad feedback. There's just feedback done badly.
Exactly.
And so it's how do you run feedback with your people that they actually see this as a really worthwhile, constructive, motivational tool to use, because people want to know what impact they make. They don't turn up to work thinking, I really want to do a bad job today.
Exactly.
The fact that they do is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
They want to know the impact they're having and how they can get better. And great leaders have this tool in the toolbox where they use feedback as a way of people taking ownership of their own personal achievement, personal development, and getting better at what they do.
No, I agree fully with you. And we spoke earlier about it before we started the session, was that your people are the asset within the business. And unfortunately, as companies and as business owners, we don't always take stock of that. We only look at the numbers and what is around us, and we see that as assets, but we don't see the value of people and the asset within the business. And I always say you're only as good as the people around you, and your bottom line will grow because of your people. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, again, poor leaders know the price of everything and the value of nothing.
Well said.
Okay, and we see that the numbers are a result. They're a consequence of what's already happened. So if you're waiting for your end of quarter or end of year results to say how well you've done, you've already missed the boat. You haven't been able to adapt to make the changes you need to make at the time to deal with either challenges, concerns, or significant change. So it's too late.
Yeah.
It's just the result, the numbers are a consequence of what's already happened.
Yes.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. What great leaders do is they're engaging with, they know what's going on all the time. And it's what people do and what the leaders do. So I come back to probably 3 or 4 headings here. Do you and your people have the knowledge? Do they have the skills? What are the behaviors? I see people with values written on boards. I consider them by and large to be a complete waste of time, effort and money.
Yeah.
Because if you walk into the business and you see the behaviours of the people, they don't reflect the values on the board.
Exactly.
So we work with our clients more on what are the signature behaviours that you are demonstrating in this business that would reflect the values that you want. Yeah?
I agree fully with you. So if I've got a value of respect, what does it mean? How do you want people to act out that respect?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
Yeah. So there's the behaviours, and then what are the activities? What are we doing? How many people sit there and say, well, I can't do that. I have to deal with 150 emails a day. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that. Once you get the activities, and this comes back to how many people do you speak to about time management?
Yes.
Well, you've got so much time, so this is about prioritization.
Yes.
And it's about planning as well.
Yeah.
And we probably don't spend enough time as leaders, by the way, in our businesses, on planning and reviewing. We spend a lot of time on just doing. So I would say the other thing that great leaders generally do is they plan and they review. But the activities that their people are doing, they can monitor and measure. Without monitoring and measuring those activities, how do you know how well you're doing?
Yeah.
And also great leaders have disciplines. and those disciplines are embedded in the business because the people see the benefit of the disciplines, of whether it's reporting on time or whatever it happens to be. You know, the business will create those disciplines for themselves, but the leaders of the people actually have to do them themselves, because they can't do one thing and expect their people to do something else.
Exactly. Walk the talk, isn't it? Lead by example.
Look at the leaders and that will determine the culture of the business.
Yes.
Look at the leaders and that will determine how successful the business is going to be.
Yeah.
And look at the leaders and that will tell you about their behaviors, because the people who are reporting into them unknowingly are modeling a lot of their behaviors, the good ones and the bad ones.
Yeah. Yeah,
and actually we pick up the bad ones a bit quicker than we pick up the good ones.
Exactly, so true. Because I think people say, oh, but there's too much hard work. But is it really hard work if you think about what value is going to add to my business? And also looking at it in terms of, I want to retain my people. It takes so much more time to get somebody new in and train them up.
Yeah.
But if you retain your people, they are the ones that can train up the newbies coming into the organisation.
Yeah. I'm going to take back to one of the other things you asked me about what good leaders do. They pick their team.
Yes. Yeah.
So they pick their people.
Yeah.
And leaders have moved away from picking competencies. Because historically in our culture, we've hired competencies and sacked behaviours.
Yes.
And more people are saying, actually, what are the signature behaviours? What are the attitudes this person brings? What's their aptitude? And let's start employing people on that basis. Are they a member of our team? Do they have the same values? Do they have the same drive that we have?
Culture, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It comes back down to the culture.
Absolutely.
Are they going to fit into the culture? And sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to lose this thought. When I interview and I help managers to interview, I always tell them it's the technical skill set is easy for me. You can always teach someone that.
Yeah.
But it comes back to in terms of how they're going to fit into the organization.
Absolutely.
What's their aptitude? Are they a team player? If they don't have it in them, that's going to be difficult to teach someone to be able to do that if they've always been running on their own.
Yeah, I look at some of the leaders in the business leaders in this country, and a number of them put on posts on LinkedIn and one thing or another, and they talk about their selection process of finding the right person for the team who's got the aptitude to learn new skills. And if we look after our people, they look after our clients. That's a Richard Branson statement.
Yes.
But there's a number of leaders, some of them not quite as vocal as Richard is, but who are doing exactly the same thing. And there's a loyalty. What is interesting is we go back to leadership density, is that the leaders aren't holding the people in those teams to account. The team members are holding each other to account. And this is where if somebody's not performing, they don't run to the leader and say, they're pulling us back. They will go and have those open feedback, open and honest discussions, and hold each other, hold each other to account.
Okay, well, that's interesting. This is a topic that we can forever talk about. It's something that's close to my heart. It's something that I'm passionate about. But I guess I know you've got another appointment as well. So just to wrap up, and I think one final question from my side is for our audience, and I always say, if there's only one thing you can go away and implement or something you want to do, what would that be that you'd advise them to do?
To the leaders, I would say honestly, leadership attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? Is the one thing. And look to improve. Very often we become leaders because that's the way it worked out. Look at developing your leadership skills and really start appreciating the impact that has on the people who work with you. By the way, this is internal and external, all stakeholders. And don't be happy with good. The biggest enemy of great is good, as Jim Collins said.
Yes.
So I would say to leaders, if there was one lesson, if there's one thing that I see, you've asked me to give you one thing. It's very simple. Have a very clear vision, have a very good strategic plan, and make sure you've got commitment from your people to execute it.
Okay. Simon, thank you so much. As I said, I think there's a topic both you and I can whole day just talk about.
Look, I'm passionate about it because I love watching. The reason we do what we do is because we love watching individuals, teams and organizations moving from where they are to a better place very
Yeah.
quickly. So it's about acceleration for us.
That's great. So you've actually touched on something now. So if the audience and our listeners and viewers are interested in making contact with you, wanting to know more,
Mhm.
or actually wanting to make use of your services, where can they get hold of you?
Great. Well, through you, of course, because you've got my details. But um, my business started as Positive Change Partners and still is, and that's a learning and development consultancy. However, and by the way, I dislike consultants in general. That's a different story.
Oh, so you dislike me?
No. When they deliver real results, I love them, but too many of them talk a good story.
Yeah.
So Positive Change Partners is the website. We run a separate business which is really pure business advisory, which is a brand of Positive Change Partners. By the way, I don't have all the answers, but I do surround myself with some really knowledgeable and gifted people.
Mm-hmm.
And the first instance is to not start charging people fees and things like that, but to say, okay, where are you?
Yeah.
Understand before being understood, and saying, based upon where you are, there's some options here, and helping people achieve that. So your Positive Change Partners, and our telephone number is 01342837660.
Wow, I can't remember mine.
There we are.
Thank
Normally
you.
I can't remember anything, so it's a big win for me.
Thank you so much. I think I've learned so much through this short discussion that we've had as well, and our audience as well. To all
Well,
of
thank you
you,
for the opportunity, by the way.
no,
It's been
my
great fun.
pleasure. To all of you, thank you for tuning in this week, and we will catch base with each other next week again for another interesting topic. So that's from Simon and myself for today. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.